Je partagerai mon temps avec la...
I'll be sharing my time with the honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent.
Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, housing costs have doubled. Rent has doubled. Mortgage payments have doubled. The needed down payment for a new average home has doubled. Before this Prime Minister, it took 25 years to pay off a mortgage. Now, in Toronto, it takes the average family 25 years to save for a down payment. Before this Prime Minister, you could buy the average home for a modest $450,000 and at significantly lower interest rates. Now you have to pay over $700,000 for the exact same home with the exact same walls, roof, windows, floors, and basement, and you must pay much higher rates on the mortgage for that home. Under this Prime Minister, housing costs 50% more in Canada than it does in the United States, and you can buy a castle in Sweden for the price of a 2-bedroom, rundown home in Kitchener. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, Toronto now ranks as the worst housing bubble in the world, according to UBS Bank. Vancouver is now the 3rd most overpriced housing market in the world when you compare average income to average house price. It is worse than in New York, London, England, Singapore, a tiny island with 2,000 times more people per square kilometer. All these places have more money, more people, and less land, and yet somehow, miraculously, their housing is more affordable. According to the IMF, Canada now has the riskiest mortgage debt in the entire G7. We have by far the most indebted households, all of whom have had to take on these massive mortgages to pay for the exorbitant house prices that have skyrocketed under this Prime Minister. And speaking of those rocketing prices, they have 2 causes. One is that the Prime Minister had the central bank print $600 billion, and when it does that, they don't just drop the money out of airplanes or deliver it to the PMO in a Brinks truck, as much as he might like for that to be the case. Rather, what they do is buy bonds on the secondary market, buy government bonds on the secondary market, which makes it easier for the government to borrow and spend, Prime Minister loves, but also has the byproduct of massively increasing the cash in the financial system, which gets lent out in mortgages disproportionately to the wealthy insiders who have connections to the banking system, who then bid up housing prices. And during that money printing orgy, we saw the number of homes bought by investors literally double in a year and a half, a 100% increase that led to the fastest increase in house prices ever recorded in Canadian history. The second cause deals with supply, and that is that Canada has the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on after 8 years of this Prime Minister. Why? Because we have the 2nd slowest building permits out of all 40 OECD countries. Only the Slovak Republic is slower. So what are the solutions to that? One, we need to cap spending and cut waste to balance the budget and bring down interest rates and inflation. Two, we need to get rid of the government gatekeepers that block home building. Now, the government has come up with this idea of a housing accelerator fund. It's a $2 billion program. They announced it a year and a half ago, and so far it has not built a single solitary home anywhere. They've had one photo op announcement where there is a promise that it will eventually build 2,000 homes. Well, sounds like a lot, but according to CMHC, we need to increase projected home building by 3.5 million homes between now and 2030. In other words, even if they keep their promise of building 2,000 more homes in London, Ontario, they would have to do that same announcement and execute the announcement with results 1,500 times to get up to the 3.5 million homes we need. Now, there's a very big difference. A lot of the media have tried to say that the Prime Minister's accelerator is an attempt to copy my housing plan. Now, it might be in messaging and rhetoric the same, but in practice it is totally different. And here's the difference. He is funding bureaucracy. I'll fund results. Let me use a hockey analogy. Right now, you win the Stanley Cup if you score the most goals in the most games and get into the playoffs and win the most games in every series and ultimately win the finals. Now, winning is about putting pucks in nets. Imagine if instead we had the referee say he's going to go around giving points based on the practices of the team members. So he would go to the Calgary Flames Saddle Dome and he would say, well, the Flames have an excellent skating drill, I'm going to give them 10 points. And then he goes over to the Maple Leafs, maybe a bad example. He says, well, they have an excellent pep talk before each game, we're going to give them a few points. And then he goes over to the Vancouver Canucks and he says, well, they do an excellent job of practicing their shooting accuracy on the ice. And he gives them a bunch of points. But he doesn't realize that when he's turned his back, that the Flames hockey team might be having a beer and pizza party every night that fattens up the teammates and makes them less successful on the ice, or that the Toronto Maple Leafs spend more time on the golf course than they do on the ice, or that the Vancouver Canucks don't practice when the referee's not looking. And so when the referee's not looking, he doesn't know what they're actually doing. Let's bring this example to housing. They want the Minister of Housing to go around and judge the practices, as he sees them, in his eyes, of each municipality, and then give them lump sum grants based on what practices they take. Now, they might speed up permits on one day when the minister's looking, but then they might increase the cost of development charges on the next, or add a new site plan process that adds a bunch of extra time after they've got this big grant and photo op from the minister. In other words, they might not actually build more houses. Just today, the minister was forced to cancel a photo op with the City of Vancouver because they're proposing to raise their development charges on new home building, even though last week they made a favorable announcement. So what is the solution to this? Well, why don't we judge our cities and their approval process by how many homes they get complete? In other words, how many pucks go in the net? That's judging by results, right? So my common sense approach is very simple math. I will require every city in Canada boost housing completions by 15% per year. Beat that target by 1%, get 1% more money. Miss it by 1%, get 1% less money. Beat it by 10%, get 10% more money. Miss it by 10%, get 10% less. Build more, get more. Very simple. Incentives work, right? That's why we give kids who perform best on their exams a higher mark to take home on the report card to their parents. That's why employers pay bonuses to high-performing employees. That's how the real world works. I'm not going to tell the cities how to do it. As long as they safely allow for builders to complete 15% or more home building every single year, they're going to get more money from my government. And by the way, they will generate more money for my government because more home building means more people working, which means more people paying taxes. All of this is common sense. Right. My government will be paying for results across the board. We will clear away the bureaucracy and we will get things done. Those that help me get things done will be made rewarded. And speaking of rewards, like the Stanley Cup, those superstars of municipalities that massively increase home building will be eligible for an even bigger home building top-up, a massive building bonus, so that they can take that money and use it to service the new communities they've allowed to be built. Now, some say it can't be done, that you can't safely build homes faster. Well, the Brits and the Americans approve building permits 3 times faster than us, and they do it even just as safely. But not just them. The Squamish people in Vancouver, thank God they don't have to follow Vancouver City Hall rules because they are on a reserve. So guess what they did? They approved 6,000 new homes on 10 acres of land. That's 600 homes for each acre. And now people will have affordable homes in that building that wouldn't have been possible if the gatekeepers had been in the way. Imagine if we could have stories like that right across the country. Right. That's what my plan, the Building Homes and Not Bureaucracy Act, will enable. My friends, let us build the homes of the future. Let us base it on the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's